Since 2012, SEPA has always been at the intersection between evidence and policy. We've been curious about why a subject which has received a lot of focus on accumulating as much evidence as evidence can get has not been having that evidence get into the minds of the politicians, getting into the minds of the body politic.
A group of people put a public interest case against KCCA. And the reasons are like this. They are saying, they are actually saying that KCCA should not come and dump their things to our place. And why? Why are they saying so? You cannot come and obtain a piece of land. You had a same piece of land somewhere in Chitezi. A landfill collapsed. And what was the reason for collapsing? There was poor planning. You never took into consideration what was required to make that landfill fit to accommodate all the garbage and everything that you're bringing. Now you're coming to our place, doing almost the same things. No measures have been taken to avert such an incident from happening again.
This is the Policy Digest, a Center for Policy Analysis podcast that explores how African societies are governed and how people and their leaders are shaping the future of their communities. Through candid conversations and insightful analysis, we aim to provide a deeper understanding of the political, economic, and social landscape of Africa. So sit back, relax, and get ready to explore the diverse and dynamic world of African governance.
This year's UN General Assembly had one highlight. That was the speech of President Donald Trump. He spent quite a dispassionate amount of time speaking about how countries who should focus on the energy crisis, transition into renewables, are going to probably get into a recession of sorts. It was quite a lot. I think you saw it, right?
Yeah.
And it's also like very important to note that that situation didn't just emerge from the beginning of time. Science has always had an intersection with politics, with the levers of how things are done, and that showed globally a direct contestation between what science is saying vis-a-vis the interests of politics, and that just doesn't stop at a global level. We all know of things that should be done. They are like the things Paul talks about. If you're a Christian, the things which are good to do, but people don't do them. But the missing gap there is normally to just look at the intersection between politics and science. And in this very, very conversation, we just want to look at the levers of coming from the science to the action, which is trying to debug and declutter that political pipe. So we want to put the question on whether science is on trial and how we can move from the science to navigate the murky world of politics. In order to do that, both at a local and international level, in order to do that, we are joined by Francis who is an advocate for environmental policy reform and justice. He's the founder of ALPWAM, which is the African Initiative for Law and Policy on Waste Management, a Ugandan-based non-profit working at the intersection of law, policy, and environmental justice. And he's a lawyer in his own right. I'm not sure we're going to talk about that, but he's a managing partner and co-founder of Vachirana. He will tell us whether I have folks that or not, company and advocates. And yes, we are going to just dive right into the conversation. Francis, it's our honor to host you here, the Policy Digest.
Thank you so much. I am delighted to be part of this conversation. Well, you ably introduced me. My name is Francis Kibombo. I'm an environmental policy reform. Policy, and I'm an advocate for policy reform and justice. And I'm also the founder and executive director of African Initiative for Law and Policy on Waste Management. commonly referred to as ALPWAM.
Thank you.
Yes,
and I understand you've done incredible work and you're preparing a public interest litigation case
Yes.
with regards to waste management. Would you like to tell us more about that as we forward into the conversation?
Yes, that one is food that is still being cooked.
You don't want to generate public support
we don't
the
need
food
to.
being
We don't
cooked.
want to say much about it, but yet we've gathered a lot of information to do with waste management. We found some number of loopholes and quite a number of stakeholders not doing their work. So I think in the next few weeks or months, we should be able to take it and we see what comes out of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the science is clear, but level on the science, just the problems are glaringly clear with regards to the environment and climate change.
Yes.
But the action seems slow. Where do you think the problem is as we get into the conversation?
This issue of climate change is not a future threat. It's a current threat. It is something that everyone is grappling with. If you look at Uganda, for example, we are seeing change. We are seeing erratic rainfall. We are seeing floods in Kampala. Recently, we saw some traders making losses because of floods that had happened. We are seeing so many mudslides in Bududa and all those things. And that is coming from all this that we are calling climate change. Now, all this that we are suffering as Uganda, the landslides, the floods and all, have an effect to the housing, to the health of the indigenous Ugandans. And who is suffering most? These are our people. The ladies, the farmers, the youth who don't have employment and they are probably depending on agriculture. If you have rising temperatures and you've grown your things, what do you expect? So climate change is actually something that we are dealing with now. It's no longer just a future threat, but it's something that we are suffering with. Now, when you look at the politics of Trump, of denialism, like we seem to be denying the fact that we are suffering with this global warming, climate change and all. However, the reality is different. People are registering all these, which are the consequences of global warming. And now, as a country, we don't need to just sit. We have the constitution. If you look at the constitution of the Republic of Uganda, to start with the national objectives and directive principles of state policy, I think if my faculty serve me well, if you look at paragraph 27 of the national objectives, they clearly tell the state or the government to ensure that we protect our environment. You get it? So, and besides the government being compelled under the constitution to that, even us as the citizens, under Article 17 of the constitution, we have a duty as a citizen to create and protect our environment. Now, the question is, who is not doing what? So this is not a blame for only one entity, say the government. It calls for dialogue for all the stakeholders, which is the state, which is the individuals, all the citizens, the people who are investing here, who have industries and all. So the harmonizing of all these groups, having a middle ground, working on everything, pursuing everything we pursue, but considering environment as a priority.
Just weigh in on that. If I had to do like a psychoanalysis of a leader who denies the impact or let's say gravity of climate change, is it that they have not engaged in dialogues of such a nature? Because their rhetoric seems to always say that what you're saying is hogwash. It's just UN. I don't want to put the words they use.
Exactly. Now,
what's the psychoanalysis of such a leader?
If you realize, I think since January, when the president of USA took over power, you realize that there has been a change in the funding of entities, especially non-government organizations and other, even governments. Now, one of the things that have been affected most are environment, because the policy of the president seems not to rhyme with what the environmentalists are saying about climate change. The government seems to look more on the science and development and doing industrialization and all, but the consideration of the effects of the work that these other people are doing is not there. So if you are not considering the consequences of the investments and all, it means that the repercussions will be felt by the poor. Who are the poor? It is us, the low-developed countries, that mostly rely on the grants from those countries, that also don't have the capacity to help ourselves to cushion ourselves from the consequences of the limited funding. Now, if the country like Uganda has limited funding, and we have felt, besides the funding being limited, even us as the individuals and the state have felt take proper action against the people who are degrading and causing all those things the people who are degrading the environment and doing all those actions that have adverse repercussions for the environment. Then, us being the low developed and the poor, we suffer most. So the thing is, if the current trend of politics seems to suggest that the funding for environment should be limited, then we need to come back and say, wait a minute, how do we go about it? If we look at our constitution, for example, as Uganda, Article 245 compels the state to ensure that the government does all it takes to ensure that our environment is protected. When we are carrying out development, when we are anything that you think of that the government wants to do, whether it's developing countries, whether it is developing the country, whether it is any planning, anything that you do, you have to give consideration to the environment.
But we're broke. We're broke, Francis. We're broke. The people give us the money.
And you see, that's one can say that Uganda is broke. But look at it. We have ministries, departments, and agencies which have been created to do this work. We have, for example, the National Environment Management Authority.
Yeah, sure.
We have the National Forest Authority. We have National Water and Sewage Corporation. But let me tell you, we've seen recently the president actually issued what they call an executive order on Zoka Forest, stopping people from northern Uganda to burn charcoal, stopping people from northern Uganda to cut timber and even export it. Now, what's happening in Zoka? You've seen some civil societies, I think it was AIJ and some other people recently. They were talking about what's happening in West Nile.
They rejected the order.
Exactly. But they have banned, they have continued. The forest is almost erased. Recently, we've seen organizations take Uganda to East African Court of Justice over Goma Forest. All these have been erased. Now, we also have these entities. We fund them. The government gives them money through the budget and all. What are they doing? They have the enforcement mechanism under the law, but the enforcement is not there. For example, look at Uganda, Kampala. It is stated that we have about 2,500 tons of garbage collected every day, daily. Where does that garbage end? You cannot explain. And now, the issue is not only about money, but so many things have to be addressed. The stakeholders that are obligated under the law to carry out some of these duties, they have sat on their duties. And that means, as a citizen, we also have to come and make these people accountable to us.
And maybe I should ask there.
Yes.
General literature on aid suggests that there's a correlation between aid and laxity of local agency. By laxity of local agency, I mean, if you help someone to do what they would do for themselves, they end up being lazy. Let's say if you always clean a child, and at some point you don't allow them to sort of clean themselves, they get to some level where they, mom's going to clean me, so I won't clean. Do you think at some point our reliance on aid to deal with these issues led to a laxity on the part of government, and it's time for us to just open our eyes and own the momentum towards dealing with our issues? Because I don't think all issues are not a global issue. Some of these we can deal with locally.
Well, that could be one of the issues, but you also need to look at it this way. What do we do when we have opportunities to discuss for funding in such conferences where such things are discussed? Recently, I think if I'm not mistaken, when the COP 29 or 28 happened, you know what Uganda did?
Dubai?
I think the one of Dubai.
Okay.
We took people, the representatives took their families, took their relatives.
Went for vacation.
They went for vacation. Now, how do you expect as Uganda to benefit from such a conference when your participation is not there? If Francis is mandated to represent Uganda for such a discussion, to negotiate for funding and ensure that the views of the Ugandans, because the reason they are sending you to represent the country is that you are having our issues that you are going to put to the table when the time for discussion comes. Now, I go and bring my wife, my child, and we go for vacation. If tomorrow Uganda does not get that funding, who do you blame? That's the issue. So the thing is, some of the priorities are not there. When the right time comes to negotiate such things, we seem to be not doing the best.
Francis, you're hell-bent at making a case for the international community.
Yes.
I want to drag you locally. I want to drag you into the local context.
Yeah, now...
What can we do without them? Does everything need negotiation?
I don't... Well, you are right. Even without...
I agree negotiation is important.
Yes, it is very important because at times dialogue solves all these things most of the time. Whereas Uganda can stand on its own, but there are times when you need other stakeholders to come in. That's why we need such conferences. However, coming to what you've said...
I want to speak like a local example. Chitezi, right?
For example, like Chitezi. Now, you look at how we are operating as a country. I have told you, we have MDAs, the ministries, the departments, agencies, and all, but we're still having these things. Now, recently... Before we talk about the Chitezi, the Kampala Capital Authority has just obtained a piece of land somewhere in Mpigi.
Yeah.
If you check properly, in the last 3 weeks ago, a group of people put a public interest case against KCCA. And the reasons are like this. They are saying, they are actually saying that KCCA should not come and dump their things to our place. And why? Why are they saying so? You cannot come and obtain a piece of land. You had a same piece of land somewhere in Chitezi. A landfill collapsed. And what was the reason for collapsing? There was poor planning. You never took into consideration what was required to make that landfill fit to accommodate all the garbage and everything that you're bringing. Now, you're coming to our place, doing almost the same things. No measures have been taken to avert such an incident from happening again. And you're coming. So whom do you blame? It means that these people, the stakeholders, now like KCCA, for example, it has failed to do what it's supposed to do. As KCCA, the person that is mandated to ensure that our city is clean, the person that is mandated to ensure that it licenses competent organizations to collect garbage from all corners of the city, has failed to ensure that before they open up a landfill in Kampala or in surrounding place, the landfill is made fit for use. Now, if a Ugandan comes up and challenges that, he's right. Why? Because the law is very clear. When you look at Article 39 of our constitution, it says that every Ugandan has a right to a clean and healthy environment. Now, if you come and start dumping your garbage in our place without taking into consideration all those things that make a landfill fit for purpose, what should an ordinary citizen do? So this comes back to the point you were asking, that what should we do, localizing the thing that we're talking about. What we are talking about here is very simple. These stakeholders that are mandated to do some of this work, they seem to be sleeping at the job. I've told you about the incident of waste transport, and you've seen the loopholes that are happening in all.
Sure.
The NEMA, the lax thing, the things that NEMA is failing to do, the police
NEMA
is not doing to NEMA, and the Ministry of Gender and Labor, Minister of Labor, Minister of Gender, Labor, and all. So this, if I may state it in a nutshell, is that the people the entities that are mandated to help us overcome these challenges seem to be comfortable in their offices and doing boardroom decisions rather than coming to the ground, engage the communities and ensure that we get what we need, even without looking at what the outside people are saying. So we need to make our stakeholders accountable. Tell them, please, do your job. If you are NEMA, why would Chituburu, for example, I'm told Chituburu, is it Chituburu Forest Reserve in Entebbe, be erased when you're saying civil societies are the ones that are making these people now accountable. They are saying, no, we shall not allow you to give our entity to a Chinese. I think they have given this forest to Tiantang. Now,
they want to clear off the forest?
They want to clear out the forest. Now, you as NEMA, what a National Forest Authority, if someone has given out the forest reserve, what have you done as an entity mandated to ensure that our forests are not encroached on? Have you also looked on? And have you left that duty to the citizens? Because you should be the first person to come out and say no. Even if you have to give a license, you say, but if you look at the requirements for doing this investment and all, you have to preserve and protect the environment. But you cannot invest because we want investment and erase, because that means that we are investing today but paying for tomorrow's consequences, which are the floods, drought, and all those things. Would you want such an investment? In my understanding of investment should be that you bring about a development in a sustainable way. So that means you can still invest and you don't affect the environment. That's what we call sustainable development.
That's okay. So my only issue here is the citizen himself has his agency to say advocate for such things has been, let's say, collapsed under the weight of general, like public order management, law architecture. And I understand an issue to do with human rights defenders sort of reclaiming that local agency. How do we get the citizen to be at the heart of now building up that sort of pressure on an agency? How do we invigorate that? Because it looks like other means are about to work, but
you're
might
right.
take longer.
You're actually right. We've had situations where environment defenders have been oppressed, they have been arrested. Actually, as we speak, it's just that I've forgotten the names, but there are people who are protesting the air corp. They have been sent to Luzira. Some of them have not been granted bail. Now, what that means is that some people even would be citizens that would want to come up and challenge this. They are a bit scared. They can't come out. But the Constitution tells us, under Article 3, that we have the right to defend the Constitution. So if someone is coming and erasing our forests, it means that is breaching our Constitution. So as a citizen, you have the right to come up and defend. Now, what I think that needs to be done for the citizens to come up for this cause, well, civil society now needs to come in. Civil society organizations. We need to, first of all, educate or empower our communities. Let the Ugandans know their rights. People need to know that they have a right to a clean and healthy environment. People need to know that they have the right to defend their constitution. If someone can come here and this guy is an investor but has come to first destroy the environment, then we have the duty as Ugandans to stop them. So if we empower the citizens and tell them that, look, whereas the development that this person wants to bring in Uganda would be good and people would get jobs and all, but it should be in a sustainable manner. It shouldn't come at a cost that today invest and tomorrow it is us to suffer because we are flooding, our houses are getting flooded, we can't get out of our homes just because someone has encroached on a wetland, and now we cannot come out of our home because our places are flooded. So I think the first thing to do is
for them to know their rights. For them
to know their rights, because the law is very clear, the Constitution is very clear, like I've told you, Article 39 and so many other provisions of the law. They give us the right to live in a clean and healthy environment. But also, we need to also ask the government to come up and perform its duty, because even before you look at the articles, the national objectives and directive principles of state policy under the Constitution, like I said, I think Objective 27 is very clear. It compels the state to ensure that we protect the environment, and as citizens, we can push the government to do that.
That's okay, because I feel like there's an issue. It's a real issue, like garbage.
Yes.
Like living in a place which is just dirty is not something a human being should enjoy, right?
Exactly.
But I feel like there's they haven't reached, there's, I think you did a bit of science. There's a point at which the water boils.
Yes.
I feel like guys are say 49 degrees.
They haven't reached the boiling point.
But I don't know how we because issues of the climate are real, and maybe do you think we need to maybe get into the intersection between, say, climate change and culture? Let me just give a case study. Must have been a year ago. I was reading about a public interest case that the indigenous people who live in the Amazon, they had filed a case in the international courts, challenging drilling, which would fundamentally disrupt their way of life, and they won the case.
Yes.
I just can't go to the specifics of the name of the tribe, but they did win the case. do you think people's attachment to the environment as a living entity, as a form of their culture or heritage, is something that would revitalize their agency to protect what's their own, away from the social contract that they have with a 1995 document? Do you think maybe culture and like religious eco-centric narratives from civil society would maybe get better outcomes than one that says, hey, there's a document that was created in 1995 that says you must fight for your rights? I don't know.
Yeah, well, you look at it this way. There we have like the fishing community. There are people who have survived. There are people who have lived and worked around the lake.
Yeah.
Their survival has been on fishing. It means that they feed, they grow, their children are able to study because they are fishing. Now, we also have some Ugandans who have been doing farming in places that are near these natural resources, and they have been getting good rainfall, and their products have been coming out, and they have been selling. Now, if we take that approach and tell you guys, you have been living at a lake, you are a lake community. Your survival has been because of this lake. Now, and you tell them the dangers of not protecting the lake, allowing pollution to go into the lake and cause all these fish and what to get like erased out.
Yeah.
If they get to know the consequences of that, they will now learn that yes, as a citizen, we really have to protect our resources, because our children have survived and have been able to study because of the lake. Our children and our bills for hospitals have been able to be paid because of the gardens. And these gardens have been, because of the forest and all the things that are surrounding us. So if we don't protect them, then it means that we shall not survive. Our survival basically depends on the lake. And I think that approach is very good, because one of the reasons that people are suffering is that the lake is being polluted and no one is coming out. But the people who have been benefiting from the lake are these people who are staying around the lake.
Yes. I feel like those people would have like better agency.
So if someone gets to know the consequences of these actions of some of the people who are polluting these places, now they will also be compelled to come out. And I think it's one of the things we need to also look into the direction and say, well, the law is saying this, but even these cultural things need to come out and help our people understand that, yes, when you protect some of these resources that have made you probably what you are, then it means that they can be taken on for centuries and maybe for generations. And some of them think that maybe these things, the survival on that lake depends and ends with them, which is not the case. So some people don't care whether the lakes are polluted, whether the wetlands are encroached on, because for them they think forests are exactly. But if you remind them that, well, you are not the first person, even your survival has been partly because of this, you need to keep this because of the benefits you've seen, then I think that one can motivate the citizen to realize that, well, these resources are very important, even without looking at the law.
Especially the economic one.
Exactly, the economic one. Because honestly, if the lake is giving you money because you're a fisherman and you're getting money, you are able to do all those things we've talked about. Why then didn't you come out and say, no, enough is enough, the pollution will not be allowed? Because these things are happening. Some lakes and rivers are being polluted openly. If you look at, I think, the Daily Monitor of yesterday, they were showing a story of how Njeru town, just near Jinja, is now polluted by these industries that have been set up. The waste management in those places is bad. Like, people are just polluting the solid waste, the liquid waste from those industries.
It's getting into the Nile?
Exactly.
Holy goodness.
And no one is taking action.
No, someone has to.
Something happened recently around Kawempe. I think there's an industry there that was doing the same thing. So when Ugandans get to know that, well, these actions of these investors and all not only affect them, the neighbors, but they also affect the generations to come. Because if you've been able to survive on these lakes because someone else has been able to look after them, then you also need to keep up that, such that the generation after you can also enjoy it.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you. No, not Robert, sorry. But I want to just be clear that people only act if you sort of speak about something that is closer to them. And I don't know how we can, for example, in the second segment of the podcast, deal with the religious aspect. Do we need mergers between religion and climate change? How do we make climate change a political issue? How can people go to the ballot to simply vote for climate change? And how would we deal with apathy, growing apathy of the international community, those who feel like they no longer hold any obligation? See you in the next segment.
Let's talk about human rights. Human rights are the basic freedoms and protections that belong to every person simply because they are human. These include the right to speak your mind, to meet peacefully with others, to participate in decisions that affect your life, and to live with dignity and fairness. They are not special privileges. They are legal guarantees found in Uganda's 1995 Constitution and international treaties. Human rights matter in everyday life, from being heard in your community to accessing public services to feeling safe online or offline. The Civic Space Initiative is here to help people understand, protect, and use these rights. Through education, training, and dialogue, we are building a stronger, more informed society where people can stand up, speak out, and shape their future. Because when you know your rights, you can claim them. Learn more at www.sepa.or.ug or www.asf.be.
2026 is upon us, Francis. So how do people in that forest which is being cut make climate change a voting issue? How do we make this a political issue? Because like we said, science and politics, it looks like one of them has to force the other to care about it. So how do we make it a political issue?
Exactly. You see, climate change is not an ideological issue. It's both scientific and moral. Now, when it is scientific, it means that it has to be driven by evidence. So for this climate change issue to come out clearly, I've had the benefit of looking at most, if not all, the manifestos of our people who are contesting for presidency.
Sure.
And I think it's maybe the National Unity Platform that actually comes out a bit clearly about it. So what I'm asking is, if we are to deal with this climate change as a country, our leaders have to take up the mantle. You cannot wish development for this country and forget about environment. Because it's not possible for you to have development without the environment. So that means if you have the development without the environment, they will both collapse. Because at the end of the day, development without an enabling environment that the developments can operate under, it will collapse. So the political leaders of this country have to come out clearly. And the good thing, they are guided by the law. The law is telling them what to do about these things. So the problem that we've had as a country is that the institutions that are mandated to work on our environment have been hampered by quite a number of things, including corruption. We've had so many instances where people are encroaching on the wetlands and the National Environment Management Authority is not working on such things. We've someone who can get like an aerial view of Mabira Forest will now tell you that that forest is almost normal. But we have a National Forest Authority that is quiet about the same. Yeah. So the leaders who are coming should be able to come out clearly about the things and say, if these MDAs are in place, why should we have this degradation continue? Because at the end of the day, if the institutions that are mandated to carry out these things are not doing so, how about the leaders? What measures have you taken? Is it the corruption that is stopping them from doing so? Deal with it. Is it the funding that is stopping them? Deal with it. Because at the end of the day, the leaders hold that power. They can influence the budget for these institutions. They can influence the management because they are the ones who appoint the leaders in those organizations. Therefore, if the leaders cannot prevail over the people who are mandated to do this, then there's a problem. So my take is that if we are to deal with this climate change in the political angle, then the political leaders also have to take on the mantle. The law is very clear. It's on their side. It gives them the powers. Let them ensure that the hindrances that the institutions are facing are dealt with, and at the end of it all, that is sorted.
It would be good to, and I'm glad you said your comparison shows that it's only Noop that is touching on it a bit more succinctly.
Yeah.
How does the person on the grassroots evaluate? Because they rarely read through these manifestos.
Exactly.
But how do we get them a boy in Chiriandong or in West Nile, as you said, with Zoka, or in Kabare, where I come from, with the wetlands are really in bad shape. How does that one person go to vote and they're voting for the environment? How do we move from a Kampala-based conversation to that local person taking it as a political issue that is close to them to exercise their agency?
Well, at the end of the day, when you are going to vote, we vote leaders for a period of time. That is 5 years.
Yeah.
So as a voter, you also need to scrutinize. What information? You don't just go to vote because so and so has come and given you this 1,000 or this amount of money for you to go and sell out your rights and future for 5 years. This vote that you're giving does not only take the person for 5 years, but also touches your future. I think the best thing to do is that as these leaders are reaching out to us and telling us what they intend to do us, we are facing all these challenges, the environmental challenge everywhere, whether it is in Kabale, whether it is in Arua, whether all corners, whether Kibombo, we have different environmental issues. Karamoja, for instance, has suffered with drought and famine. And all these are effects of climate change. So if you're a politician that is coming to sway ask our votes from the people of Karamoja, what are you telling them about the challenges they are having, which are coming out of this global change? We know very well that the livelihood in Karamoja is not good. People are not having food. People are not having where to sleep. Children are not able to go to school. Why? Because the environment has been degraded. There is the high temperatures, there is no rain. When it is there, it is erratic, almost roads are impassable. So as a leader, what do you promise to do for those people? And besides the promises, what is it that clearly shows that these people, if voted, can bring out all these work on all these challenges they were facing? Now, that is Karamoja alone. West Nile, you've had the Zoka forest and the effects. The burning of charcoal, the selling of timber has almost caused drought. The place has become a semi-arid. Now, if you are someone who wants the people of West Nile, who have now started suffering the consequences of cutting of trees, how are you giving them hope that when you are elected as the president, you will be able to ensure that some of the things are worked on? Can we have reforestation in the area? Do we encourage our people to plant trees in their homes? Do we encourage people to desist from activities like burning charcoal and they find formal employment? Some of these people have resorted to burning charcoal because they lack what to do. So are you going to skill the youth who are unemployed with some kind of skills that they need to survive? Are you going to help them get formal education such that they can keep away from things that are making them encroach on the wetlands? Those are the questions that people need to ask before they can zero a leader that they want to take on. So if a leader cannot answer the questions that answer to those points that we are talking about, then a citizen should not go out for them, because every area has these challenges. But the question is, you as a leader who is coming out to be our president, how are you able to address them such that the detriment of these actions of maybe the community, the investors are stopped, or we move away from that kind of suffering and now start a new chapter as a community, because each community has its
own unique climate change.
Exactly.
I think you make quite a point, and to our dear listener, what plan does the leader who you are very excited about have for climate change, the climate change issues in your community? It could be the declining amounts of rainfall. It could be the arid nature of your soils at the moment. It could be waste management. What is their plan? I think those are quite some crucial questions that citizens should be able to engage in. Just to get into the other part of the conversation. Fine. These people in the global north have said from the time of the Kyoto Protocol to that, I think the Doha amendments to the Kyoto Protocol to Paris, Their word game seems to be like the word game of a boyfriend who is promising the girlfriend heaven and earth.
Yeah.
I will love you till Lake Victoria dries up. But their action game is very, very bad. Well, what do we do in terms of climate finance? Because cash is at the center of how we do this work. We may hate to talk about it, but cash, finance is at the center of this. How do we reclaim our ownership of finance? Because I had a conversation last year with someone going to COP. They sang the same song, even previous year, even from Charter Protocol.
Yeah.
It looks like our song is, you guys will owe us, you guys will owe us. But what if they never come through? Or what if they come through at a rate at which we just can't wait that long?
Well,
how do we
it is clear
solve the problem?
I mean, in the last few years, you've seen that there has been a paradigm shift on how the funding moves, and how you can clearly see how most countries in the sub-Saharan have really struggled with funding and all. Now that speaks a lot, because it means that you cannot rely on funding alone, because at the end of the day, the environmental change, given what has happened already, they are not going to stop because funding has stopped to come. Some people keep doing what they have been doing, and that means the effects will even triple or even multiply. So what needs to be done in terms of funding? I think we need to look at the capacity. We need to build capacity for Uganda and ensure that we can take it on as a country. But that also calls for building integrity systems. Because here we have challenges where people take the money. The funding's there, it doesn't work, it doesn't go to where it's supposed to do. Now, as a country, we need to address those things. How do we build the capacity to fund ourselves? And if we have done so, do we ensure that the money goes for what it is meant for? These institutions that we keep our money, or we entrust our money with to help us to, curb these climate change effects, are they doing the right work? Are they reaching out to the communities that they intend to reach? Are they doing what they need to do? Are they putting in place the systems that we need in place to ensure that everything... Now, if that is done, it means that we can be able to push. But if you cannot work on your capacity and the integrity of the institutions that we are dealing with, then that one shows you that there is a problem. Now, the other question is we need to also work on adaptation and build resilience, because we need to be resilient in a way that I had a privilege of moving around this country, for example, in 2019. If you recall, in 2019, this country was hit by floods in most of the countries, KCCA area and the Bugishu region. Now, I happened to go to Bududa one time, and also Silonko. When we were coming, I think when I was in Silonko, we were coming from Kapchora. So now from Kapchora back to Mbale, we reached Silonko, and the rain was just horrible. So the place was flooding. You were seeing bodies of people moving in the rain. And what's the issue? These the landslides are happening and all those things are because of climate change. People are dying. The landslide is happening because the climate change effects are now being felt. Now, we need to build resilience and encourage our people to take steps in ensuring that some of these challenges, we don't need to wait for a one funder or foreigner to come to the country and help us. For example, reminding a Ugandan or a citizen to plant a tree in their homestead doesn't require us to wait for funding. We all stay where we stay. We have space. Even when you have a 50 by 100 space, you can plant a tree or two, and it can help us with what we are fighting for. So we need to work on resilience and ensure that some of these things can be...
I agree with you. And I think in the conversation early in the first segment, we had talked about laxity that people get. Whenever they see an NGO coming, they think of transport refund, they think of the aesthetics of change without necessarily driving change. do you think civil society still has a moral authority? Because you talked about accountability, right?
Yeah. Yes. Now the
government
the thing is,
we need new champions.
Accountability is very important, but maybe this other point is also needs to be highlighted. You see, this climate finance needs to help mostly the people that are affected most. Yeah. Who are the most affected people in this? We have our farmers, we have the youth, we have the women.
Yeah.
How do we ensure that this climate finance helps them? Because at the end of the day, if the farmers in the villages are not helped, they will keep encroaching on some of these resources. They burn charcoal to survive.
Yeah.
They will. The youth who don't have jobs will go to the forest and ensure that they can survive by cutting those trees and sell timber. Now, the women who don't have what to do, you see,
and so it becomes a zero-sum game.
So when you're addressing
someone not to survive, they won't hear you.
Actually, the beneficiaries of this climate finance should mostly be those who are affected most. And to be honest with you, the most affected persons by this climate change thing are the youth, the women, and the farmers, those who are neglected in the rural areas. So we should ensure that as we fight to work on the climate finance and all, the people who are affected most should be given priority.
Where is the money mostly going to? Consultancies to...
The money is going to...
You see, consultants on how to solve climate change.
Even when you check...
Where's the money going to?
You will find that the money is in consultancies, it is in these MDAs. People are making boardroom decisions without even reaching to the ground. So you find that at the end of the day, the decisions are made sometimes, but perhaps the people that are affected are not even considered. So before we even start putting a lot of money in these offices, we need to ensure that those who are affected most, those who contribute most, or those who will be hit most by the effects of climate change are given priority in the financing. So if that is not addressed, we shall keep with this rhetoric all the time, and at the end of the day, we shall keep suffering from the consequences of
I think that's okay.
Yeah.
So, you know the polluter pay principle, right? The one who pollutes must pay. In this specific case, let's say the human rights defenders who were against ALPWAM, their case was stop ALPWAM.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a better case other than stop ALPWAM? Maybe fix your issues as you do ALPWAM. Should there be like a percentage either of like a carbon tax that they place on carbon intensive projects, either industries or on ALPWAM itself to sort of fix the climate finance cap? Because the last time I checked in the National Climate Finance Strategy, I think we are quite behind. On how much? I think billions to just meet our 2030 NDC targets. Yeah.
So you see, I think we need to contextualize this. The ALPWAM project and the climate change, of course, the activists have their cause, and it is understandable. But what you also need to understand is that climate change doesn't stop development. But development must take place without hampering the environment.
Is that possible for development not to hamper the environment?
It is very possible.
There has been an opportunity cost in the picture.
Exactly. Even when you look at the law doesn't stop development. But it will tell you to develop well, respecting the environment. Now, the mistake...
Is it possible to do that?
The mistake that happens here is that we seem to be... We relegate to the backseat what the law says. So the investors who come here tend to dictate what they want. And the people who are required under the law to prevail over their actions seem to go to the whims of the developers or the investors. While the law requires that the developer must actually comply. Now, the issue here is not about development. Development can be done while respecting the law. However, it is because we've given so much power to those who are coming and destroying, and we've forgotten about the law. And we've forgotten that our law actually, if respected, has power and can prevail over anyone. If, for instance, the people who are mandated to align whoever is coming to invest here are pushed to enforce and ensure that there's compliance, I think that can be done. But the problem, in my view, is that, well, in as much as we want this development, for example, Jacob is bringing in this all amount of money, but we cannot benefit from it if the tomorrow is not secured. And how is it not secured? The effects of these projects, if we don't look into them before they actually implemented, then the tomorrow is not certain. The issue is, for development to be there, it should be able to provide for us a better tomorrow, not a better today and a worse tomorrow. So my thinking is that if the law is very clear and is giving you direction that you should take as a country, as an investor, as a parastatal that is mandated to regulate this person, as a citizen who is perhaps going to benefit from those projects, then let's follow the law and then development comes. If that is done, then it will only be development without the environment. Yet we can have both the development and the environment for us to have what we call sustainable development.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this podcast. Do you have any parting shots as we close this conversation on how politics and science can coexist and rub on each other the right way? Yes.
My thinking is, like I said, that climate change is not just ideological. Let's have science and development at the heart of policy. If we can have science and development at the heart of policy, then this climate change will not be a problem. But the problem is that we have one and forget the other. Yet we are supposed to ensure that all the things are harmonized. The moment there is harmonization, then the climate change is actually dealt with. Because at the end of the day, the people who suffer most from the consequences of these climate change effects are the farmers, the youth, the women. And if these people are not helped, it means that we shall keep carrying on or even multiplying the problem. So let's have science and development at the heart of policy. If that is done, then we address climate change.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Since 2012, SEPA has always been at the intersection between evidence and policy. We've been curious about why a subject which has received a lot of focus on accumulating as much evidence as evidence can get has not been having that evidence get into the minds of the politicians, getting into the minds of the body politic. And in this podcast, we just dealt with that. How do we move from one step to another? But that's just not it. The global financial architecture is changing with post-Donald Trump politics, with the deregulation of so many sectors, the lack of a specific focus on climate change. We think that we must reclaim the local agency, and this podcast has gotten into those aspects. So in case you would like to listen more to these conversations, keep glued to the Policy Digest podcast. My name is Joseph. It was an honor to have you.
Why should we care about human rights? Because they are the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace. Human rights ensure that every person, no matter who they are, has the right to express an opinion, belong to a group, take part in their country's decisions, and live with dignity. These rights protect us all in schools, in communities, at workplaces, online, and in public life. When human rights are respected, societies are fairer, safer, and more inclusive. But when they're ignored or abused, people lose their voice and their power. The Civic Space Initiative exists to make sure that doesn't happen. Together with communities, civil society, and institutions, we are strengthening the knowledge and tools needed to defend civic freedoms and uphold the rule of law. Because when human rights thrive, everyone benefits. Visit www.sepa.or.ug or www.asf.be to find out how you can be part of the movement to protect and promote human dignity. Your rights, your voice, your future. This message is brought to you by the Center for Policy Analysis together with ASF in partnership with the Belgian Partner in Development.
Thank you for listening to the Policy Digest podcast, the Center for Policy Analysis podcast that is profiling African ideas and people that are shaping the future of their communities. Subscribe to all our platforms on YouTube and Podbean.